On Tuesday, September 24th, 2019, Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi announced that the House was moving forward with an official impeachment inquiry into President Donald Trump. From the Gatehouse Media Studios, I'm Dave Morris, and here to provide some analysis and context from the Oklahoman is Chris Casteel. Thank you for your time today.
Yeah, sure, Dave.
You know, in front of me right here, you provided me with a couple printouts of when the Oklahoman covered President Clinton's impeachment proceedings. You spent decades out of Washington, D.C. covering various political things, including an impeachment.
It was huge. I mean, it's obviously one of the biggest stories, if not the biggest story I ever covered, and unpredictable. Even though a lot of it seemed kind of preordained, still you didn't know what was going to happen from day to day. But certainly a historic few weeks in the life of the nation.
All right, so walk us through, again, Speaker of the House Pelosi announcing impeachment inquiry. So what does that mean at this point, and then what are the various steps and phases that we may see going forward?
It really is, it's somewhat analogous to a criminal investigation, although what's always going to be different about impeaching a president is that you don't have a particular statute, you don't have the same rules of evidence. I mean, it's all really a process that, to some extent, it's so seldom used that they just kind of wing it. But basically where we're at right now with this impeachment inquiry is as an investigation into the facts of what happened. And what happened with Bill Clinton in '98, really a lot of that investigation had been conducted by a special prosecutor. I think he was called a special prosecutor at the time, Ken Starr, into the whole situation with Monica Lewinsky and whether the president had lied under oath in another case.
What did we see looking back here, and again, the headlines you see there when the Senate acquitted Clinton? So what are we seeing from where we are right now with what you covered back then?
Well, again, the number one, the Republicans were in charge back then. You had a Democratic president, so the total reverse. Now you have a Republican president and a Democratic House. But again, back in '98, most of that investigation had been conducted by Ken Starr. Very detailed report about what they had found, and the articles of impeachment were drawn up primarily based on that report. And I think they passed 2 articles of impeachment sometime in December, I think early December of 1998, and those articles of impeachment then were sent to the House.
Even though those situations are reversed as far as Democrats and Republicans, it could be a likely scenario, not to speculate here, of if it goes to a Senate, that vote would probably be very similar to what we saw here.
We have the same situation, basically. I mean, we have a situation, and to get back to the process, if they do forward articles of impeachment, multiple articles of impeachment to the full House, the House will then vote on those articles of impeachment.
And that's a majority vote, correct?
A simple majority of those present.
And the Democrats have the House.
The Democrats control the House. You want to assume that they're not even going to bring them up if they don't think they have the votes.
Right.
If they think there's enough moderate Democrats that would not do, because they're not going to get any Republican votes, at least based on what we know today that we're talking about this. I don't think there would be any Republican votes, and you might have some Democrats. So if you get that majority vote for an article or multiple articles of impeachment, then the Senate, it's up to the Senate to try the president on those charges.
And it's not a majority vote in the Senate.
It's a 2/3 requirement. It would take 2/3 of the Senate to convict the president of one article or more.
It's an interesting process, and as we mentioned before, it's like trying to predict the weather. These days, the news cycle is so fast and so many things happening.
It is, and it's so different from what we've come to know about the criminal justice system, where you have all of these kind of constitutional protections built in on, the defendant has in terms of what, who testifies, what evidence is presented, his own due process. This has been done so seldom, the only 2 presidents have ever been impeached, that number one, the Constitution doesn't provide for a lot of details about how this process is conducted by Congress. So it's not like being indicted. It's a political process. It's not a process done under the criminal justice system. So a lot of it might look like they're kind of winging it, but again, there are just very few requirements under the U.S. Constitution for how they charge someone and then proceed on those charges. High crimes and misdemeanors can mean really whatever the party in control wants it to mean.
Andrew Johnson and Bill Clinton being the two that were impeached. Richard Nixon, of course, resigned before
right.
things got going. One last question for you. You know, we're looking at these headlines. It's 20 years ago.
I know.
President Clinton, when you were out in D.C. covering things, the whole news processing has changed a lot from technology to social media.
It absolutely. I mean, there was an internet in 1998
Sure.
and 1999, but
we had running water and everything.
It wasn't how we think of it today. I mean, it was, and again, the social media component was not there. You know, it was a very different. You did have the 24-hour news cycle because of TV.
Yep.
You know, but yeah, clearly it's you know, just today. Today's the day where the House Intelligence Committee released the whistleblower's complaint. Within minutes, everybody could read every word of it because of the internet. So yeah, the information flow is just instantaneous.
Well, plus the candidates 20 years ago weren't on Twitter because it wasn't around, but you know, giving themselves a voice as well,
right,
firsthand. All right, all this and more you can find on various Gatehouse Media properties. You can follow Chris Casteel in the Oklahoman and Oklahoma City. That whistleblower report that he alluded to, you can also read that for yourself online as well. Chris, as always, we appreciate your time and context and expertise.
Glad to do it, Dave. Thanks.